The Hawkeyes pick up their second dominating victory against a rival, this one 41-3 over Minnesota. It's time to start talking about the Iowa Hawkeyes in the college football playoff.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button while you're watching. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio here in the state of Iowa. You can hear me currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network with stations fanned across the state each weekday from noon to 2. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Well, we are going to take a big peek ahead to the future of this season and what it can mean in the month of November. By the way, where Iowa is 23-2 in their last 25 games, but they have four very difficult opponents coming in towards the end of the season. We'll talk about that, a look about possibility of Iowa being ranked going into that matchup against Oregon, the improvements that this team has made. But of course, we start today with a look at the dominating win against Minnesota. And boy, did that feel good to do it in that fashion, to rub the nose in it of Phil Fleck. Just the dominating performance that I was surprised to see. Now, if you would have told me before the game that Darius Taylor was only going to carry the ball once, that Iowa was going to score, well, via field goal, of course, a rushing touchdown, you could imagine that, a passing touchdown for the first time since the UMass game and the first time in conference play that Iowa has a passing touchdown, and they do it with defense and they do it with special teams. Well, yes, of course, we're going to expect that, but certainly didn't expect it going in there. I thought it was going to be a grinded out affair. And, you go back to the beginning of the game. Iowa gets the ball as Kirk Ferentz has done for years. And I have no idea how that became all of a sudden a big narrative this week of Kirk taking the football. It's something that's been happening for the better part of 27 years. At the bottom of every game notes for the last decade plus, at the end of the game, they always have that note in there, the record in those games and what I was done taking the football first. But they do it here. It actually worked. And there's going to be very little that's going to sway Kirk Ferentz away from his way of thinking of taking the football first, even though defense is certainly the strength of this program and this team year after year. Regardless, they get the ball, 9 plays, 75 yards, and they do it with running. They do it with passing. They cap it off as Iowa seemingly always does with a touchdown on the ground with Mark Gronowski. Had a beautifully designed play, and hearing Gary Danielson talk about that, talk about the design of that play and just how good this Iowa team looked through the first 29 minutes of the football game, 30 minutes of the football game, and racing out to the 31-0 lead. And it even felt like it could be worse. I mean, Minnesota had no shot against this defense. And the way that this defense continues to build upon itself is a sight to behold. From there, after the touchdown from Gronowski, you get a 3-and-out, get the ball back. The drive stalls, yet get the field goal. Good to see Drew Stevens knocking a couple in today, including that one that made it 10-0. And then after that, late in the first quarter was the pick six. And we've seen Iowa close. And we talked about Aaron Graves, the big man, running and getting cut down at Wisconsin at the 1-yard line. Xavier Wampa last week against Penn State, getting to the 1-yard line and finally punching in. And the ridiculous number of Iowa now, just year after year after year, being able to get that pick six, to be able to get that defensive score, and the way that they're able to do that all the time. I mean, year after year, that Iowa's going to be able to do one of those things is just absolutely incredible. 18 consecutive seasons now, the second longest streak nationally behind Utah's 22 season, the 56 pick six in program history, and the 39th inside of Kinnick Stadium for this one, as Iowa pulls off, mentioned all the ways of scoring, offensive, defensive, and special teams touchdowns. First time they've done that since the 2019 Holiday Bowl against USC, and USC is something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Mentioned the ground game with Gronowski. I thought the passing game certainly looked better, but there were also those moments again where it just kind of gets stuck in mud. They went after former Hawkeye John Nestor a lot in this one. You could see that they're knew certainly the way that he plays, knows probably his strengths and weaknesses, and that was going to be an area that they were going to target definitely early in the game. We saw CM Phillips get a jump on him, and overall, a little bit of production. Another part, Cade Weegan had the punt return, and a punt return where did he have an invalid fair catch on that one? I'm just look back and see it again. He's kind of pointing. And we go back to 2 years ago and the only time that Fleck was able to get a win against the Hawkeyes. But Weegan doing different things with him and still building. One of the things going back to the springtime and even winter time and the decision for Caden Weegan, was he going to move on, try to stick on as a returner somewhere in the NFL? Was he going to go out and as a transfer, try to find another home and go that direction? Was something that was definitely an opportunity for Caden Weegan. But instead of doing those things, he decided to come back for another year. And when that happened, one of the things that was talked about a lot with Weegan is that they were going to try to use him more in the offensive part of the game. And you saw it early on. It felt kind of clunky. One thing that we talked about a lot during the summertime, and our great everydayers who are with us every single day, they know this, is just not doing kind of the simplest equation, right? Not just going out there and giving him the ball on a jet sweep, but using him in the passing game. And we saw that 3 receptions in the game, 49 yards. I had the one up the sideline where he was a shoestring away from getting into the end zone on that one. Speaking of that, same thing with Kamari Moulton. He had a couple of those opportunities. Also great to see late in the game, Jazzian Patterson getting in there, getting an opportunity. We'll talk a little bit more about those reserves and what they were able to do. Vanderzee with the touchdown. Great to see him, 29 yards. There was a couple other opportunities in the end zone that just missed. I was still not there. This is not, but the passing game is showing growth. It's still about what they do up front. It's still about the ground game. Another great thing about this game is they did it basically the majority of the game without one of their starters on the offensive line as Bo Stevens went out. And it sounded like afterwards, Kirk mentioned in the post-game press conference that if it was a tighter game, Stevens probably would have been out there, but that gave the ability to Leighton Jones to be able to go out there and get a whole lot of snaps. And you got him now getting more and more acclimated. He's going to be a starter at the guard spot next year for this team. Obviously, because of the blowout fashion of this game, you got to see more of those reserve offensive linemen out there. Want to talk about that more and just the improvement of this team, including the defense. This defense wasn't very good in September. And now here they are as we finish up the month of October playing at an incredibly high level. And though they have incredibly tough opponents, the next 2, Oregon, USC, 2 teams can move the football, 2 teams can score. I feel pretty good about this Iowa defense. We'll talk about the growth of the Hawkeyes as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. For this week, our moving the game forward player from Mazda is Zach Lutmer. That pick 6 put the game on ice in the first quarter, making it 17-0. And it just looked like one of those days where Minnesota was never going to have the opportunity. Coming up with that big pick, getting into the end zone, getting the streak down to 18 straight years. And they've been having a hard time and getting a little bit from the coaching staff. They were able to do it. Zach Lutmer gets into the end zone, and he is our Mazda moving the game forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. As we recap the Iowa win against Minnesota, 41-3, and a great performance in all phases of the football game. Want to talk more about the defense. And you go through and you look at what they've done. And Mentioned early in the year, this was not kind of a vintage Iowa defense. First game against Albany, and a completely overmatched opponent. And there were just a couple of those moments. We thought Albany was going to be really bad. And there were just those moments during the course of the game where something felt shaky. Of course, they lost to Iowa State, but they kept building. They kept the old adage, break the rock, right? They kept chipping away and getting better. And now you have Zach Lutmer that looks like he is going to be an absolute star who gets the pick six today. You have Xavier Wampa, a guy much maligned, 5-star coming out of high school, one of the most decorated players that Iowa football has ever got. And there was disappointment. Well, you see him now playing at his best level, certainly of his career. The growth at the linebacker spot. Shire's running around making plays and doing his thing, but now with the insertion after the injury of Jaden Montgomery, it looks like linebacker has been very shored up. Got to give credit. TJ Hall gets an interception in this game. We've talked about Deshaun Lee, what he's been able to do, their growth that we've seen at the cornerback spot after it was such a weakness for this Iowa team a season ago, and they've taken a big step forward. And not doing it going out in the portal and getting new guys. No, just keep getting better. And then, of course, up front. And what they were able to do, again, generating pressure, getting to the quarterback, making it incredibly difficult on Drake Lindsey in this game as he throws 3 interceptions to the Hawkeye defense. Just overall, they were all over the place. And then you get excited about the future because we got to look at those guys. A 4th down stop from Yosei Epinesa as he was able to get in there and make it work. He's got still one more game to play with, if you will, before his red shirt will be burned for this season. Cam Buffington with the interception and the return that went along with it. So we got to see a bunch of new faces also out there in this game late because of the blowout. And you certainly have to be excited about that. Now, Kenneth Merriweather got hit again, and he's got to keep those emotions under check. Remember, he was the one that also, I believe, had that penalty late in the first half against Indiana that set them up an opportunity to get a field goal late in that one, and what was a close game. And still, there's going to be a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda about that Indiana game as Iowa sits now at 6-2, and how different the narrative would be at 7-1 if they have that win in their pocket against the Hoosiers. We'd be talking about a top 20 team, probably a top 15 team, certainly after what Indiana did, then follow that up with a win against Oregon. Iowa's going to get their own opportunity against the Ducks. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But this growth out of this defense, what they've done, and turning it into a strength. This team, a lot of people left them for dead. After that loss to Indiana, it was nothing left to play for. Who cares? It's more Kirk ball. It's more of the same. And yet year after year after year, you see this. And it's not always the prettiest. I get it. It's not always aesthetically pleasing. And for some people, I guess that's what they want. I want wins. And they continue year after year after year to stack up victories. And this team's getting better. And you couple it with the upside of this team, with a good quarterback, a great running quarterback, and an okay passing quarterback. You throw in the fact that this offensive line is playing at their highest level as a group since certainly 2015. I mean, when you talk all-encompassing. And I know a couple years later, they had 3 NFL guys on a line. The problem is you had Tyler Linderbaum, and Alaric Jackson, and Tristan Wirfs, and all those guys are elite, and were elite college players. The problem is the guard play was terrible. And not just bad, but they had injuries on top of it that season, and it kept what could have been a really good offensive line. I think you can argue this is probably the best offensive line as a group that they've had since 2008. And that was a team also that got off to a slow start, end of the season with a big win against Penn State, went to the Outback Bowl and absolutely dominated South Carolina. In today's era, a playoff, now they would have made it with 4 losses, but still, that was a team that nobody wanted to face at that offensive line. Now, we're not ready to get into the rarefied era of 2002, but this offensive line just mauling people up front and the level that they're playing with. This team has more upside some past teams, and the improvements and what they do year after year. And I mentioned the number earlier, Iowa in November, just how good that they have been. Now the schedule is going to be tough as maybe that they have ever faced. You got 2 road trips. You got the short week against Nebraska. Of course, it will begin after the bye week this week as they will take on the 6th-ranked Oregon Ducks. Oregon, with the win, didn't look pretty. Dante Moore had to leave the game after he got bloodied against Wisconsin, but the Badgers hang around. And You go back to their game against Indiana. I know a lot of you said unwinnable. There's no way that Iowa can win it. I think a lot of people have changed that perception. Iowa's going to have to play well. They're going to have to tackle well in space. And this is a team that was such a bad tackling team. I mean, go back to the Rutgers game, and certainly the first half of the Rutgers game. How bad they were. Just fundamentals. And now where this Hawkeye defense is today and this Hawkeye team is today. They've won it a couple of different ways. They've done. And after the Indiana game, you wanted to say, no shot. Here they are. Now they still have to run the table. I mean, they still have to go 4-0 in the month of November to be in the college football playoff. But here's the thing. It's attainable. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not here for hot takes, but it is realistic. That's what this team has accomplished in the month of October. And as we get ready for November, and here comes Oregon, likely an 11 o'clock game. In fact, we'll talk about that. What time is this one going to kick off? I know it's a question a lot of people have. We'll give you it is an educated guess. We will give you our hypothesis on when this game is going to kick off and how special November can be for the Hawkeyes. Plus, are the Hawkeyes going to be ranked? We'll talk about that as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. It's almost the weekend. Time to not look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Hawkeyes this week, well, we had a bunch of different people, but talk about delivering in a big way. Let's go in this one with Caden Weechin. Had the punt return that absolutely salted away in the first half, got involved in the passing game. They used him, motion, moving him around, also had a carry in the game. You talk about delivering, that's delivering in a whole bunch of different ways with no hesitation and no delay. Caden Weechin has been on a streak, and this performance has not been a fluke. Just like Caden Weechin delivered for the Hawkeyes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through November 18th. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Well, as we get ready for Sunday, we know the NFL season continues on, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel app is great to use, user-friendly, and it doesn't matter. Maybe you've been a longtime sports wagerer or you're getting new into the game. They got you covered with a wide menu of options. Already got games up for next week in college football. As we sit here late on Saturday evening, they got you covered there. The NFL, you want to put together a same-game parlay, maybe take a small bet and turn it into a bunch. They got you covered there, plus a huge futures market. If you want to predict who you think is going to win a championship. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action, whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats. FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com and download the FanDuel app today to get started. That's FanDuel.com. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast coming to you 5, 6, sometimes 7 times a week, depending on what's going on. And we got you covered every single day. All right, as we continue, hit subscribe watching YouTube or a 5-star review. Would really appreciate that. Well, I would be ranked. Interesting. Not getting a whole lot of buzz in the AP Coaches Bowl. We still got to wait another week, I believe, before we will get the college football playoff rankings. But I do think it's going to happen. Not only another dominating performance here, Iowa sitting at 6-2, playing some good football, but also some of the other things that are happening in college football. Iowa, of course, has 2 weeks before it's going to happen, but you look at the bottom of the rankings, Illinois, ranked 23rd, lose. Arizona State, ranked 24th, loss. LSU ranked 20th, not just lost, but absolutely throttled at home at a night game at Tiger Stadium. Oof, there was a miss on that one. South Florida ranked 18th, loss. We have another week of football before I was going to come around. I think that I was going to be ranked heading into the matchup against Oregon. Now, when you look at this Ducks team, they're probably solidly in 6, and I don't think they're going to move up much. Everybody ahead of them this week 1. Alabama hair on fire. I mentioned A&M. Of course, Ohio State, Indiana. Don't see any losses for either of those teams here in the next 2 weeks and next week of games, I guess, if you will. Georgia, they get Florida coming up on Saturday. Don't think the Gator, I know it's a rivalry game, but don't think that's going to happen at the cocktail party. So Ducks will likely be ranked 6, and I think Iowa is going to sneak in there. They got a shot. You might not have thought it during the summertime. This was the game that I had circled. In fact, I said of the 2 biggies on the home schedule, this and Penn State, they were more likely to beat the Ducks. Well, they already got the one against Penn State. You put 2 in your pocket. Whew, 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 whew. Yeah, we're having a different talk. I think the rest of the way, the most difficult game remaining on the schedule for Iowa. 2 weeks against Oregon, at USC, home for Michigan State, and that at Nebraska. I still think it's USC, and I don't think it's particularly close. And that's not any kind of knock or bulletin board material for Oregon, anything like that. It's the road trip. It's a USC team that can score. The difference, though, between Kinnick and going on the road is immense. Iowa going to the West Coast, a place that they have historically struggled, not just under Kirk Ferentz, but go back to Hayden's time as well. It hasn't gone very well outside of the aforementioned 2019 Holiday Bowl. Now, also remember last year, they did go out, got out to a 10-0 lead against UCLA before Brendan Sullivan decided he was going to go kamikaze diver headfirst into a linebacker, and he got injured and had to leave that game, and Stratton had to come in. But still, I think that is the most difficult game. Followed up by Oregon. At Nebraska, it's a road game again, short week. And then, of course, what's going to happen at the end, in between the USC and Nebraska road trips, a home game against Michigan State and Sparty. Ooh, they look rough. Again, Hayden Childs exits the game. They got their own set of issues. Look, it's not realistic, as I said, but it's plausible. And if you would have looked at this team after the loss to Iowa State, if you would have looked at this team, we didn't know the health of Gronowski after that loss to Indiana and what would have, should have, could have been. And here we are today. It's a fun time. It's always great to be a Hawkeye. Today, a little bit greater. And we talked about it a lot this week, and I know there was plenty of Gopher fans that were chirping at me because I don't like Phil Fleck. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't like his shtick. I don't like his personality. He's not my dude. Not my kind of guy. And the great thing is he's not my coach, so I don't have to try to defend him. I don't like him. And to watch him, to see him have to use a timeout, 4th down and manageable, and kick a field goal to make it 34-3. Yeah. A lot of smiles during the course of that one, and definitely another one added to the docket there. That was good. Now, get healthy, get ready, come up with a great game plan, and let's go beat the Ducks. Of course, we got a loudmouth here on the Locked On Network. Spencer has been talking a lot. If you watch Locked On College Football, you watch our squad show with Locked On Big Ten, you know he likes to chirp a lot. And I've been telling him since the summertime, Kinnick in November's got something waiting. So what's this game going to be? What is the likely scenario? What we do know is it will not be a night game. Iowa has already hit their home allotment for night games. And in fact, the rest of the season, both this and against Michigan State, they cannot play a night game. That is the rules that are in place. Iowa's already played their full allotment. Because of that, we know. So that means it's either going to be an 11 a.m. kickoff or a 2:30 kickoff. And you go through the Big Ten slate. And we'll see if it's going to be a 6-day window. We'll find that out likely tomorrow. But if it's not, it's the traditional 13-day window for TV start times. We will know on Monday when this kicks off. I think it's destined for Fox. Both teams, as I said, I think are going to be ranked going into the game. You look at the rest of the slate in the Big Ten, there's a Friday night game, Northwestern at USC. Obviously, that's not going to move. Nebraska at UCLA, they're not going to put the big noon kickoff game at 9 a.m. at UCLA. Washington at Wisconsin, no chance. Maryland at Rutgers? No way. Ohio State at Purdue? It's the Buckeyes, but do they really want to put a 49-6 drubbing on like they've done it before? The only other game that could be big noon that day is Indiana Penn State. And we know Penn State is not the Penn State they were before the season. Because of that, I think this is going to be a noon kickoff Eastern time, 11 o'clock for us here Central, and 9 a.m. for the Ducks body clocks. Don't got a big problem with that. Dan Lanning will have his group ready, and so will Kirk Ferentz. We will have tons of time here over the next 2 weeks to preview this matchup. We will break it down. We'll take another look back at this one, go through the tape and see what we find in the Iowa win and see what else jumped off the page in that one. We'll have the numbers from Pro Football Focus for you as well coming up here as we break things down. And one final look back. A big week in front of us. Basketball is going to be starting up. The Iowa women with an exhibition. We're going to talk a little bit more. I'll mention the scrimmage against Texas Tech. Some good, some poor out of that. We'll have you covered on that front. Iowa will open up the season on the men's side against Robert Morris, and their opener coming up here a week from Tuesday. It is the fun time of year, and Kirk Ferentz and company made it a little bit more fun as Iowa has something to play for. No, not a bowl bid, a college football playoff bid. Got to be perfect to get there, but it's on the table. Hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, 5-star review on the podcast side, and a big thank you to everyday listeners with us each and every day. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast. Thanks for being with us. It's always great to be a Hawkeye. It's even better when you throttle the Gophers. Take that, Phil. We'll talk to you again on Monday. Until then, go Hawks.